Ladies and gentlemen, I figured it'd be a cold day in hell before I did this to myself again, but tell the devil to bundle up, because we're having another look at Rat King. There's some weapons in the game that I just don't get along with. Rat King, ever since the launch of Destiny 2, has been one of them. It's a sidearm, which really isn't my thing. It's covered in rats, it's got a rat skull on the back, the foresight's a piece of cheese, and nothing against cheese, I just don't really need it on my gun. But in all seriousness, it just felt very inconsistent to me, specifically in PvP. The hit registration just felt kinda off. In light of the recent auto-aim fall-off changes made to sidearms though, I grew curious. Was this the change that I needed for the weapon to feel usable? We'll see. But let's get into it with a quick look at Rat King's stats and perks. Rat King is an exotic kinetic sidearm. It fires at 300 rounds per minute, holds 15 in the magazine, and has a maxed out recoil direction of 100 once the catalyst is unlocked. When looking at the stat line, it's actually pretty average when compared to other 300 RPM adaptive frame sidearms. The stability and handling do come up a little bit light, while the reload stat sitting at 50 is slightly ahead of the curve. The catalyst boosted aim assist value at 80 is solid, but it's not too far out in front of other adaptives. The airborne effectiveness stat sitting at 31 though, that is pretty darn good. The intrinsic trait is Rat Pack. This fully automatic weapon becomes stronger when nearby allies also have it equipped. Stacks up to 6 times. In full disclosure, I'm not going to be breaking this facet down. I don't like reviewing aspects of a weapon that are contingent on other players. But by stronger, Rat King will receive an RPM boost, a magazine size increase, and a potential bump to the stability. I found a very well researched Reddit post containing all the details, and I will have that linked down below if you'd like to check it out. Onto the exotic perk of Rat King, Vermin. Reloading immediately after a kill grants a brief period of invisibility. Then for the exotic catalyst, on top of the intrinsic stat boost, it will refresh the user's health on proccing Vermin invisibility. So health regen and invisibility when reloading after a kill. If Rat King is a weapon that you still need to add to your arsenal, it can be purchased from the exotic archive at the tower under the red war tab. And the catalyst, to the best of my knowledge, should still be a random drop from strikes or nightfalls. But onto the PvE section, starting out with a look at Rat King's functionality. So, Rat King does fire in full auto. I'm just holding the trigger down here, and you can see that nice vertical recoil direction. It does want to climb a good bit though if you're not managing that recoil. For the Vermin perk, we secure a kill, reload the weapon, and Void Invisibility appears on the left side of our screen, and will persist for 6 seconds. You can also see after taking some damage and then proccing the perk, our health is going to immediately regenerate thanks to the catalyst. And just a heads up, you can pair this invisibility with the Echo of Persistence Void Fragment. It's going to extend the overall duration to approximately 8.5 seconds. For the reload speeds, at base I have the time to reload and fire the weapon clocked in at 1.51 seconds. If you want to throw on a single sidearm loader mod, you can cut that down to 1.28 seconds. The physical range should come in right around 15 meters, but we'll double check that when we move into the PvP section. So I guess we're into the damage numbers, but as always, allow me to remind you,
PvE damage numbers are variable. They can and will change depending on content scaling or enemy tier. This is why I try to keep all of my testing in the Conflux Lost Sector on Nessus versus Carl the Colossus, to keep these damage numbers consistent and comparable from video to video.
So for Rat King's damage versus Carl, we're looking at 3,959 points of damage on a crit, and 2,824 to the body. And that is right on par with other archetypically similar sidearms. No intrinsic damage boost or anything like that here. You can see here Drang's hitting Carl for just a shade less because of that 5% damage reduction between kinetic and energy weapons. If you gave Drang 5% more, the damage would be the same. But back to Rat King, with its 15 round magazine, the max single mag damage with all crits is going to come in at 59,385. I have the time to empty clocked at 2.79 seconds. So Rat King's damage per second is right in the ballpark of 21,285, which is pretty good for primaries as a whole, but right around 20k is more or less where I would expect to see base sidearm damage when in their optimal range. For Rat King's PvE performance, I'm going to be brief, mainly because I don't have a ton to say on the matter. This is a solid ad clearing weapon, it's a sidearm, by default it does hit pretty hard, and being an exotic primary it does see 40% more damage versus red bar targets. And then the invisibility and health regen is a great get out of jail free card. If you're in a bad spot you can sneak in a kill and get your health back, and since you're also going invisible, enemies will disengage, allowing you a window to get yourself back into a better position. So just on those 3 aspects alone, you could probably take Rat King into some mid-tier content and fare okay with it. But I think the big issue with it in PvP is just that physical range. It's a sidearm. Generally, inside of 15-ish meters is where they thrive. If you're heading into higher end content, even with the health regen and invisibility, it can be pretty risky playing in that tight. And then, no built-in damage increase. Now, if you do have multiple teammates running it at the same time, like we talked about in the stats section, you will get the RPM and mag size boost. I'm sure you've seen the videos, it can get pretty wild and people have done some pretty wild stuff with it. But when running it alone, you take away the kill activated utility points, and it's just the sidearm. If you enjoy using it though, I mean, go for it. If you have a few buddies that want to run it with you, see what you can make happen. But if you're looking to Rat King as a standalone PvE exotic to lean on, I'd say lean elsewhere. Onto the PvP section though, where Rat King has been seeing some decent traction as of late. On this side of the game, we find it dealing 51 points of damage on a crit and 37 points of damage to the body. This puts the optimal time to kill at 0.6 seconds, which is very fast, but it does require 4 crits. The body shot time to kill comes in at a respectable 1 second flat, with 6 shots landed. Something else to make note of though, we do have a solid suboptimal time to kill of 0.8 seconds, achieved with a very forgiving 1 crit 4 body bullet combo. This will be applicable versus Guardians running tier 7 resilience or lower. Tier 8 or higher, you're going to need to go 2 crit 3 body, but still not too bad. Now if you do have a 15% damage buff rolling, like high energy fire or an empowering rift, you can actually go 2 crit and 2 body and hit that 0.6 second optimal time to kill. Or you can put all 5 shots on the body for a 0.8, which is going to match the base suboptimal kill speed. For Rat King's optimal physical range, it does come in as expected, right at 15 meters. Inside of that, you'll see full damage. You start moving back, and damage fall off will occur. For Rat King's performance in PvP, I'm happy to report that my unwavering hatred for this weapon has now evolved into a love-hate relationship, which, any way you slice it, is an improvement. And in the current meta, a good handful of players do seem to be adopting this gun. Currently, Rat King is the 16th most used weapon in the comp charts, and it was sitting just outside of the top 20 in usage rate for quick play. Much, much higher than I ever remember seeing it ever since I started keeping tabs on this sort of thing. And I get it. I understand why players like this weapon. And with those sidearm changes that went into effect a few weeks ago, this weapon does feel a lot better to me. I couldn't hit a damn thing with Rat King in the past if there was any sort of ground between me and my target. Now, from that 10 to 15 meter range, I actually can put bullets on the enemy, which helps out immensely in trying to kill them. So, thumbs up on the buff with this one. The difference is tangible, even for a non-sidearm user like myself. Then the kill speeds. Just at base, that 0.6 second time to kill, best in the game, outside of one-hit kill weapons. But even that suboptimal 0.8, it hangs right in there with other weapon classes' optimal time to kill, generally speaking. Just overall, this weapon hits hard and sits enemies down quick. Also, you have the invisibility aspect. Nothing new to those who main hunters, but you probably can make great use of it if you're equipping your falcons. But for someone who rarely ever plays on that class, just the premise of being invisible is awesome. Not being fired on every time you round a corner, or creeping up on an enemy completely unaware of your presence because you're not pinging their radar, isn't something I get to experience very often these days. I just don't have the time to play all 3 classes anymore. But the invisibility, I do like it. I like it a lot. Then the health regen from the catalyst. It's a great benefit. For me, it's not too often that I'm going to walk away from a close range engagement unscathed. But with Rat King, when the kill was secured and the weapon is reloaded, the health bar kicks right back up to full in just a matter of moments. So basically, you're fully ready to deal with any secondary targets that may be in the area. So the potential definitely is there to go on a pretty good roll with this thing, if you're landing your shots. On top of all that, the airborne effectiveness stat is pretty good. Now, I always get a little extra boost in that department from Ophidian Aspect, but regardless, in the times where I was diving down on a target from the air, it felt pretty consistent. There is a lot to like here, but as I said a minute or two ago, it's still a love-hate thing with Rat King for me. I find it tough to be very accurate with this weapon, and while just getting shots on the target tends to be enough most of the time, when trying to deliberately land those crits, they were just hard to come by. Now, as most of you probably know, I am not a skilled sidearm user. I just ended up aiming for the body. If the weapon climbed to the head, it climbed to the head. But it was a very rare occasion where I actually saw that 0.6 second time to kill. Then the weapon's recoil. While it is nice and vertical, when using the weapon at its max fire rate, it definitely wants to climb on you. Even on PC, I had to make that conscious effort to pull back on my mouse a little bit while I was firing on a target. When I forgot to, bullets were getting sent out a little bit too high. So just watch, because the weapon might fight you a little bit. And last thing, the limited sidearm engagement range. As we saw in the testing, about 15 meters is the most that you're going to want to ask out of it. For someone like myself who tends to live in the mid-range, this can be an uncomfortable zone. Shotguns, SMGs, fusions, shoulder charges, lightning surge melees, other sidearms. All deadly up close, and all things you do need to find a way to combat. Now, some players live for this stuff. Close range is where they want to be. But if you're someone who's not accustomed to it, not practiced at it, it can be a tricky transition. But overall though, I'd say Rat King's performing pretty darn good. A ton of upside on the utility end of things, and damage potential for some big plays. And that auto-aim sidearm buff definitely did help out the weapon's consistency a good deal. If you're like me and Rat King's just been hanging out in your vault, now might be the time to finally give it a go. But hey, if you did enjoy this video and found it useful or helpful in any way, feel free to leave the video a like and consider subscribing to the Ironworker Gaming channel for more of my Destiny 2 content in the near future. If you have any additional thoughts, drop them down in the comments, and follow Ironworker814 on Twitter if you'd like to reach out to me over there. DMs are always open. But with all that being said, I'd like to thank you for taking the time out of your day to check out this weapon breakdown. You guys are awesome, and I will catch you on the next one.